Well, once again, it is time for one of the most exciting parts of the SSL calendar, exciting to me at least, the SSL Prospect Draft. I'm Metafiction, and I'm joined today by our illustrious Commissioner Candidates.
Hello.
So, as always, this is going to work in. We are going to take this one pick at a time. This draft has been happening uh, pretty much over the last week. The organizations have been taking their picks from the pool of prospect draftees, the academy players that have been playing over the last 15 academy match days, and now is where they are going to be matched with the team that drafted them. And this is always a source of excitement, a source of intrigue, some surprises, but also some very exciting opportunities. And honestly, like I say, it is one of my favorite parts of this SSL calendar just because it's such a great opportunity for these players to know what sort of environment they're walking into, what they are going to be able to contribute to their new organization.
And we're coming off I think one of the largest draft classes we had last season. So a bit of a smaller class this season, but still a couple of players, around 30 of them, are going to be joining their new SSL league teams or organizations, as we call them, this afternoon or tonight, if it's European time zone, as I am.
And indeed, it is. Well, there's really not much more ado that I can think of, Candace. So I believe you have the honors. If you, well,
Yes, we have the first overall selection in the S19 SSL Prospect Draft. And it is CF Catalunya who holds that draft pick. And they select from Stockholm's IK Art de Trella, the user Trella.
so Art de Trella, primarily a central defender, but also can play striker and central defensive midfielder, which is a very interesting combination of positions. Um, unfortunately, unfortunately, I don't know if it's. Oh, there he is. Okay, I apologize. So certainly a very versatile player up the middle. You don't see a combination of striker and central defender very often, but those two those two positions do have a surprising amount of synergy. Uh, 13 acceleration and pace, uh, 13 positioning should help with defense, and 13 finishing. So this is going to be a player that can plug and play basically anywhere up the center of the pitch. Good pick for Catalonia and another exciting addition to their squad.
Up next at 2 overall, we have AC Romana with this pick. And they select from, I don't remember what the team was. I think it was Sydney City. Coin flip, the user Midnight.
So this is a very strong physical player. Another central defender. It's very rare that we see two central defenders taken in the first two picks, but certainly a very strong class in defense this season. 18 pace, 6 acceleration. Pace and acceleration so important in the SSL. Good jumping reach as well, but I also want to point out 16 strength and 13 balance and agility each. So certainly very physically oriented, going to be a rock in defense there for Romana and London.
You mentioned the two central defenders coming off the board at pick 1 and 2. We usually see a couple of central defenders coming off the board in the first round, but this is probably the first time they've gone 1 and 2 in this draft system that we have in place. Without further ado, we have União Sao Paulo with the third overall selection. And they select, also from Sydney City, Slabhead, the user's a cynical gamer.
Well, now we make it 3 picks from 3 that are central defenders. Can also This particular player can also play central defensive midfielder and on as a right back. Another very physically strong player with 15 pace and acceleration and 15 strength, but also 15 positioning, which is going to be a huge boon out of the gate positioning so important for defensive players, being able to get in the right places to stop attacks. Brings the ball out of the defense, so that tells me more of a ball-playing defender type that's become so very popular in the last few years, really. Uh, and certainly another very strong pick here, and that just builds this really strong União Sao Paulo core that has been developing over the last few seasons. We saw it start to come to fruition last season, and now they're continuing on that trajectory.
Midway to the first round, we have Hollywood FC with their 4th overall selection. And they select from Atletico Medellin, Howie DeWitt, sorry. The user iSpear32, who's a Pop-Tart, it seems like.
Well, indeed. If you'll pardon the pun, this is how we do it.
I get it now.
Yes, this is a player who primarily plays central defensive midfielder, but can also play center back. So I suppose the streak continues in its own way. Again, very physically strong. 13 aggression is worth noting as well. It doesn't show up on the screen there, but aggression is one of those attributes that might be a little underrated, but is actually can help with making those like more risky challenges. It also may lead to a few more yellow cards. So we don't have yellow card accumulation booking or suspensions in the SSL, but nevertheless, putting yourself on a yellow card can be a bit of a downer. But in the meantime, I think this player will have the discipline not to do that. Again, I think this is a solid addition for Hollywood.
And one of the best renders in this draft, I think, with the Pop-Tart.
Oh, without question.
We can take a look a bit at the first 4 picks, if there's anything that we see. I mean, we do have the 4 defensive positional picks right now. 3 central defenders in a row and then a central defensive midfielder. Is this something that you think is a trend in terms of the needs for teams or organizations?
I think it's more so a statement of the fact that the way the SSL is built, it seems as though defensive players are a little bit more of a rarity, especially good defensive players. And so whenever we have really strong defensive presence, they tend to go, as you say, in the first round. So I think that is sort of what's happening there. Not to discount at all the abilities of the players that have been taken. Certainly all worthy picks. I just believe that at least part of it is that scarcity. Not to denigrate the many attacking players we have in this draft. It's just attacking players naturally are more popular than defensive players because everyone wants to see themselves scoring goals. Defense, though, still very important, and I've been on record saying that if you make a defensive player, you have all of my respect.
Definitely one of the harder, more difficult positions to play in Football Manager, in terms of you tend to see the other team score on you in a lot of the highlights, but you can still be there and be a very impactful player for sure.
It's very much like playing offensive line in professional football. If you're doing your job well, nobody knows your name. If you aren't, then everyone knows who you are.
I wouldn't know what an offensive line is doing, so but those who know in the listeners here, they can understand that analogy, which is good. We have 5th overall, Tokyo Sports Club, taking their first pick, and they select from Sydney City, Dalton Canders II, the user DalC21.
So this is the only goalkeeper in the class. This might be a bit of a surprise this high up, taking a goalkeeper 5th overall, when Tokyo already has Fernand Revest as their long-term solution in goal. However, at Cairo is currently the only goalkeeper they have on their roster is Dobby Rube, who is deep in regression. So the thinking is that this will be a replacement for Dobby Rube in Cairo to sort of shore up the defense in Cairo, who I believe finished last in the SSL minor league this past season. So definitely taken with that squad in mind, I should think. 14 aerial reach and 16 one-on-ones. This is a keeper that certainly has room to grow, but is definitely going to be able to contribute well for Cairo out of the box and potentially challenge for a spot in Tokyo down the line.
Buenos Aires is up next with the 6th overall selection, and they select from Stockholm's Idrottsklubb Valentin Morgenstern, the user Pythonic. I see now that the text here has been a bit skewed, but Valentin Morgenstern, the user Pythonic.
Well, it's another defensive player. This is a bit of a really long streak that we have here of defensive players. Again, though, certainly not unwelcome. A lot of really good defenders in this class. This is a player that looks like they will be trying to play out more from the back, 13 passing and 12 vision. Along with that trait, tries killer balls often. So this is very much a ball playing central defender, potentially a libero in the right system. Going to be very crucial in not just stopping attacks, but kickstarting their own team's attacks. I think this is an intriguing pick for Buenos Aires Atheni, and I'm really excited to see how Valentin Morgenstern fits into their tactic.
We have the reigning SSL Cup champions, Reykjavik United, coming up next with the 7th overall selection. They won the cup after, I believe it was 7 consecutive tries. The 7th one was the first win that they had in their league, in their organizational career. So with 7 overall, Reykjavik United selects another Stockholm Eco player, Bimitar Darbatov. The user Russ drives the bus.
So this is a very strong offensive presence here for Reykjavik United that they've taken. I believe this user Russ drives the bus was previously on Reykjavik. This is their new player after having retired their previous player, so there's certainly an affinity there. Should fit right into that locker room like nothing changed. So there's certainly something to be said for continuity there. As far as this player goes, 17 acceleration and 15 pace right out of the gate is going to be a lot for minor league defenses to deal with. So certainly going to be exciting to watch. It will be aiming to make really strong runs past the defense and put the ball in the back of the net.
And to round out the first round, we have the league champions, Schwarzwälder Fußballverein, with the 8th overall selection. And they select from Stockholm's Eco, Cameron Millwall, the user Stevo.
Another defensive player off the board, a central defensive midfielder, playing that holding midfielder role, certainly taking a special skill set. Can also play a little further forward as an out-and-out central midfielder or in the back line. Fairly well-rounded build. 13 marking is clearly the highlight here as far as I'm concerned, as well as the trait marking opponents tightly. This is a player that can really contribute in marking out central attacking midfielders of the opposing team. Will be very difficult to get around this player off the off. Certainly also going to be worth noting 13 pace, fairly quick, especially for a holding midfielder. So I think this player has a very solid platform to grow into something special in that midfield. Schwarzwälder, of course, playing most of their matches last season with just the one midfield presence in Dombrovski Maximiliano. So drafting some long-term help there for Maximiliano makes a lot of sense.
And that rounds out the first round, and we see a bit of a defensive focus here as well in the last four picks of the round.
Indeed, like I said, when a strong, active defensive player hits the board, you have to consider taking them no matter what. They will often be best player available, or at least fit a need, even if necessarily, you know, y- y- you can never have too much defensive help, in my view. So certainly, as far as I can tell, the only out and out attacking player uh, is Bimitar Derbatov. We did see Art Detrea can play as a striker, but Derbatov is natural on the front line. So it's a very interesting dynamic here in this first round. It's going to be very, it's going to be a very exciting development in the minor leagues, or perhaps in the major leagues, to see this wave of defensive players come through.
Like you said before, it's a bit of a is lackluster the right word? Lackluster position.
Not so much lackluster, more so that it's unsung. It
Yeah,
doesn't get
yeah.
as many highlights in theory. So it's but it's still very important to any squad makeup for sure.
Yes, you can't win a game if you don't have any defense. We've seen a couple of examples of that in the SSL League history from before. But with that, we can move on to the second round of selections, where we see Reykjavik is back up with the 9th overall selection. So a lot of these picks have changed ownerships depending on or from the original ones. So this was originally Catalunia's first pick in the second round, but they traded that in a previous trade to Reykjavik United. We will have some trade announcements that happen in the draft, but they will come later in this broadcast. So Reykjavik United is back on the board for their second pick at 9 overall, and with their 9th selection, they pick from Stockholm's IK Mikko Rashford III, the user Whitecap.
Well, it seems that Reykjavik wants to have a monopoly on every player named Mikko Rashford. Given the legacy of the first one and certainly the current progress of the second one, I mean, you can't blame them, really, can you? This is another attacking player. Primarily plays out on the left, but can play in at right wing or as a center attacking mid as well. Going to be adding to that attacking presence of Reykjavik North Shore. 16 acceleration, 14 pace, and 13 technique. Going to be a very flashy player to watch. Although, with that said, only 5 players, so perhaps not so much in the manner of tricks, so much as just making electrifying runs through the middle, which is on the left, more likely as it may be. Nevertheless, Reykjavik adding to that attack. Can't really complain about this.
10th overall, we have AC Romana with their second pick this draft. And they select from Atletico Medellin, David Luiz Jr., the user G2019.
So another central defender. Again, I'm sorry I keep pointing this out, but it does keep happening. But nevertheless, another seemingly passing focused ball player, though maybe or defender, but perhaps not to the sense as previous players. Is going to try those killer balls, so will still link up between defense and midfield, but also very skilled at marking and positioning. So this is a player that can contribute both in defense and in linking up the counterattack. Going to be a very, very exciting player as long as Romana and London handle their development correctly, which I'm sure they will. But yeah, certainly another very intriguing pick here.
I believe this is the final central defender on the board. There might be some others that are coming in later, but definitely central defending dominance now in the first and the second round. Up next, União Sao Paulo with their second selection at 11th overall, and they select from Sydney City, Zach Mulder, the user Mighty Mulder.
Well, this player is another player that can play all along the front line, primarily right wing. However, they do, according to the trait, they do tend to cut inside from both wings. So this is striking me more as an inside forward type of player. Will cut in from wide positions and play more centrally in support of the attack. 14 acceleration and pace and 13 dribbling. So they're going to be running with the ball a lot, which is evidenced by the trait runs with ball offense. So going to be making those runs to either take the shot themselves or play in another teammate. And it's another piece for that young Sao Paulo Paris attack that should pay dividends in the near future if their recent track record is any indication.
And just a comment from the Sao Paulo tactician, they do play with inside forwards, so this seems to be a player that definitely fits their mold of wingers. We have a trade to announce for 12th overall. We have, let's see if I can get the correct image. This is the one, yes. So we have Hollywood and Catalunya taking part in a trade that sends Hollywood's second round selection, the 12th overall, to Catalunya, alongside with Hollywood's S19's third round selection, 20th overall, in exchange for Catalunya's second round selection in next season. So Catalunya, let's see, is getting 2 picks for a future pick in next season's draft.
Well, Catalonia clearly wanting to assemble as many picks as they can to try and get as many players out of this class as they can. I think in that regard, it's a fairly good return for a second rounder from next season. It remains to be seen how high that second rounder will be, whether it be at the top end of the second or the bottom. But I think for one pick to turn it into 2, that's fantastic business for Catalonia.
It's always good when you can get more out of an asset. So with the 12th overall selection that Catalunya now owns after this trade, they select from Atletico Medellin Kim Hyung Min, the user Riceball 22.
Well, this is a player that I'm really excited to see. Riceball was the user who created the SSL legend Franco Torres. Torres recently retired, and this is Rice's recreate. And if Kim Hyung Min lives up to any amount of the legacy that that Torres left, then this is going to be a very special player. Left winger by nature, but can also play striker and right attacking mid. Good pace, good finishing, and will be making those moves into channels and has the physical ability to knock the ball past the opponent and get into those attacking positions. Certainly has paid off well in the academy. 12 goals there from just I believe that's 658 xG, 658, 659. It's a little small for me, but nevertheless, a very good return there, and very exciting to see how this unfolds for Catalonia.
Yeah, it's a bit small. It says 659, but definitely okay. A bit more, just smaller than double the expected goals for Hyung Min here in the academy. We have another trade to announce. Catalunya is back in it again at 13 overall, and they made a trade with Tokyo for this 13 overall selection. And in total, we have Catalunya receiving Hannah Van Gerritsen, the user Reno, I think, if I remember correctly, and the Tokyo S19 second round pick, which is 13 overall, and another second round pick from next season. Tokyo's originally owned that. And in exchange, Tokyo receives a Mordello, the user Sonic Gmail, if I'm not mistaken, and the Buenos Aires as well as Reykjavik's third round picks from this draft, 22 and 23 overall, respectively.
So this is a trade that I think very vastly benefits both sides. Obviously, Catalonia getting that 19th overall pick in this draft, or that 13th overall pick, I apologize, in this draft, as well as a second rounder from Tokyo next season. They also get a player that has contributed fairly well for Tokyo this past season in Hannah Van Gerritsen. Uh, I believe Van Gerritsen is inactive at the moment, but if they can get their user Reno back active, then that is going to be a huge get for them. Meanwhile, for Tokyo, they needed an upgrade in midfield, and Amore Dela was clearly that pick. They also managed to trade back for a couple of extra picks in this draft, so they do gain a net pick from this draft in exchange for this pick and a pick next season. So I think this trade is fairly well balanced. I think it has benefits for both sides here.
And with that, Catalonia is on the board for 13 overall, their third selection in this draft. And they select from Stockholm's Idrottsklubb Caroline Medema, or Caroline Medema. The user Lieutenant Forest Puppy.
So this is a player that primarily plays as a right midfielder. Now, a lot of not a lot of teams that I've seen in the SSL primarily use wide midfielders. But with that said, that's not to say that they can't be effective, because they absolutely can. It's just not a very orthodox position. However, I think that's far from a detriment. In fact, it's a benefit, because that extra tactical versatility can be really play into a player's hands, or feet in this case, considering we're playing soccer. A 15 pace, 13 acceleration, and will be playing as a facilitator with that 13 passing as well. So this is a potentially creative player out on the wing here for Catalonia that can really play in some of their attacking talent.
Buenos Aires as their second selection in this draft, up next at 14 overall. And with their selection, they pick from Sydney City the Alex Neil, the user Favenviro.
So this is a strong midfield presence here for Buenos Aires here. A fairly well-rounded build, 13 passing the main highlight, but also trying killer balls. So this is a player that is going to be, you can be able to trust to ping out the right pass to get the ball where it needs to be to facilitate attack or relieve pressure in the defense as well. So certainly you can never go wrong with a strong presence in midfield like this. Certainly a strong platform to develop into something even greater as well. So I like this pick. And the thing about midfielders is that they do have a lot more attributes to keep track of, so they are spread a little more thin. However, I think this is a very good base to build off of.
15th overall is Reykjavik back on the board with their third pick in this draft. And they select from Atletico Medellin Kick a Ball, the user Overdue.
So a right-sided defender here in Kika Ball. Certainly going to be interesting to see how they fit into the Reykjavik North Shore setup. I will say I do like the 12 marking and passing. So this is going to be a player that seems to be fairly more defensive focused, but is capable of making those important passes. Marking the opponent tightly is important. So good to see investment there. Again, more of a defensive presence, more of a rock on that right wing, which you love to see it, honestly.
And then with the final pick in the second round, we have Schwarzwälder Fußballverein once again on the board. And they select from Sydney City King Jarek, the user Joe Steele.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what to make of the render, but I do like the pick. Another right defender, but this one is the opposite. This player actually has the trait of liking to beat the offside trap, which is a little unusual in a fullback, but could see some very intriguing tactical application. Solid pace to start out with 14. Nothing to complain about there. Is going to be pretty good at beating their opponent. And honestly, this player could make some really good runs up that right side. Also capable of playing in central defense or as a central defensive midfielder. So another defensive, versatile uh, presence there. I think this is very good value for SFB.
And that rounds out the second round, and we can look at the overview a bit here. We've seen some different positions being picked now in the second round. Not a lot of focus on the central defenders. Is there anything you want to highlight from this round?
Well, I think that this is another. I think we're starting to see some of those more attacking players starting to filter in. I am noticing a lot of wide players now in this round. We focused more centrally in the previous round. Pretty much every player primarily plays in the center of the pitch as a central defender, central defensive midfielder, or a striker, and also the goalkeeper. I suppose you could say plays centrally. This round focused more on the left attacking mids, the right attacking mids, the left defenders, the right defenders. Well, more so the right defenders than the left defenders, but nevertheless. So that this is the round where teams seem to have addressed their more wide needs. Largely, the only exception would be Tokyo trading for a midfielder, trading away a wide player for a midfielder, but that's not really technically a draft pick, so I don't know that it counts. Uh, but it is very interesting every season to see how draft strategy evolves as the rounds progress.
It almost feels like if one organization picks up one player in one position, then most of the other organizations tend to go for the same position to maybe not lose their priority over there or in those positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every organization almost certainly has at least a couple of players in the position that they need scouted, just so that they have options in case their first choice is taken before they can get to it. So I would imagine that that is sort of the source of these runs on certain positions that we keep seeing.
And we also have the opportunity to, or the users, the academy players that are now being drafted, also have the opportunity to re-roll or redistribute their positions and TPE. So even though they are drafted in one set position, maybe that's not the position they will play later on. So a couple of these picks might be more user focused than the positional focus that they have right now.
That's definitely also true. As I pointed out previously, some of these users that have recreated are established presences in the SSL that they're just recreating. Over these last couple of seasons, we've seen a lot of the players who have stuck around from the first couple of seasons are now creating new players, and so we're seeing them sort of come back into the fold. There's connections already there, chemistry has been formed. That is a huge plus in this.
We are about to set off with the third round of selections, where we have CF Catalunya once again making a pick. I think this is their fourth pick in this draft in total. And with that selection, the 17th overall, they select from Sydney City, Trecartista, the user Euler.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm a little surprised that this player fell this far. One of the class leaders in TPE, if I'm not mistaken, and a very strong attacker to boot. 18 acceleration is the one that grabs the headlines. 16 pace as well to go with it. Making very quick runs into the box and scoring. Moving into channels and playing 1-2 so they can cooperate with teammates as well. But 14 finishing. This player is designed to score goals, and in Catalunya setup, I'm sure that they can do just that. I like this pick a lot.
União São Paulo is coming up next with back-to-back picks at 18 and 19 overall. And at 18 overall, they select From Atletico Medellin, the Hugh G Play, the user Mystic Toe Jam.
So a central defensive midfielder here. Well, I'll tell you something, Jimbo. This is a very exciting pick. Um, Sorry, that was horrible. Anyway, moving swiftly on, very strong concentration and teamwork abilities as well as positioning. So will be an anchor in that middle, in that central holding midfielder. And when I say anchor in this case, I mean the good kind of anchor, the one that you build a midfield around. This is a very, very strong pick for this point in the draft. Going to be very difficult to get past this player in midfield, I believe. So, huge value here, I think, for União Sao Paulo.
And joining Sao Paulo alongside Jeplay, we have from Sydney City, Joe Mamba, the user Irish, and then a bunch of zeros.
Well, I'm starting to think that Sao Paulo might have something for punny names at this point, between Hugh Japlay and Joe Mamba. But in any case, you can't really fault their instinct here. This is another wide player primarily who can play a little bit in the center, but is very agile, very high top speed, and will dribble past just about anybody in their way. Does tend to cut inside. Again, we saw earlier with, I believe that was Zach Mulder that they picked, who is also suited to a more inside forward sort of position. So that feeds into this as well. Going to be exciting to see if they can pull off any overhead kicks, as that trade would suggest.
Definitely, I think we've seen some attempts at overhead kicks. I don't think I've ever seen an overhead kick goal, but it would be very, very fun to see it happening in any type of SSL game.
I will tell you, if I ever see an overhead kick in a goal or any game that I'm commentating, I genuinely might lose it. That would be amazing. I eagerly await it.
You would be one of those Latin American commentators just screaming goal everywhere and drowning everything out.
I genuinely might go full Gary Neville if that happens. If you know, you know.
20 overall in the third round. We have CF Catalunya making their 5th pick this draft. Another organization that is just picking up players left and right. And they select from Atletico Medellin, Day Walker, the user Scudmuffin19.
This is another experienced user who is re-entering the league with a new player, formerly Scud Muffin, as the name would suggest. Day Walker is another wide midfielder, so that's a very interesting pickup here for Catalunya. Will be, again, playing more of a facilitator role, but does have some pretty good pace, but although might struggle to get there quickly with only 5 acceleration. Still, though, not much to complain from the mental side of things. 13 in anticipation, concentration, and teamwork. So this might be more of a supportive, facilitating, possibly a little bit on the defensive side, judging by the 13 positioning and marking. Sort of a wing player here. Can also play left wing back, which might also play into future tactical considerations for Catalonia. So I think it's a bit of an unorthodox pick, but we know that the user does have experience in the SSL, so it'll be very interesting to see how they get on.
And then in the second half of the third round, we have Tokyo making 3 picks in a row, and then we end up with Schwarzwälder, or we finish off the third round with Schwarzwälder. But coming up next in 21st overall, Tokyo selects from Sydney City, Elias Kruger, the user Jetty Taz.
So this is a player that is designed to mainly help out on the wing, primarily a left attacking midfielder, but can also play as wide midfielders on either side. We'll be trying to dictate the tempo there, as you can see. 14 Flair is a very interesting choice, and I think should lead to some very unexpected passes being made. especially from long range. I like this high dribbling. I do want to note fairly low acceleration and pace might slow them down in the early going, but there's certainly plenty of time to develop that. And I think there's a lot to like in the passing and technique department that more than makes up for it. So I think this is a very sneaky good pick here.
And joining Kruger in Tokyo, we have Malakai Sturm, the user Alexei3755 from Stockholm's Eco.
So this is another a player who can play as striker and is going to be very important in helping out that Cairo attack first of all, and then eventually the Tokyo attack is the hope. Three traits is a very good sign early on, moving into channels, placing shots, and curling the ball. So going to be some very interesting movement and shooting from this player. High technique and high finishing is certainly a very huge boon here. Uh, yeah, really not a lot to complain about here. This player is going to want to get into the box and score goals as much as possible.
And Tokyo picking up the third player here in a row at 23 overall, and that is also from Stockholm's Eco, Lorenzo Rigoberti, the user Messer Morpheo.
So this is going to be a left-sided player here, primarily a left wingback, but can also play a left fullback and a left midfielder. Plays with back to goal is a very interesting choice for a wide defender to have, especially one who is going to be playing primarily further back. But I do like the restraint on taking long shots. I think that's probably a wise decision for the player that this is trying to be. This is a more defensive player with 13 possessioning and 13 determination. This is the sort of player that you will want to have in your corner in a very tense situation. I think with a little bit of time and effort, this player will develop into something really solid there on the left flank.
And the final selection in the third round, we have Schwarzwälder Fußballverein, and they select from Stockholm's Eco David Wendt, the user Shiny.
Well, again, we have another player who primarily plays as a wide midfielder, but also plays centrally as a holding midfielder. So playing short, simple passes helps generally with those with slightly less passing ability. However, with 12 passing and 11 vision, this is a player that can certainly pass the ball. More relevant is the ability to dictate the tempo. So this is going to be a player that can essentially keep the offense or the attack rather ticking along, keep it in check, and make sure that everything's proceeding as needed. A strong contributor in both the attacking and defensive phases. Very well rounded. I like this.
So with that, we have the third round selected, and we've seen some various positions being picked at this point in time. Anything that stands out from this round?
Again, I'd like to point out that we are seeing some of these new players coming through from experienced users, but we also have first-time creates, which is also very exciting to see. New creates are the lifeblood of any sim league, and to see so many players that are joining the SSL for the first time, whether it's their first sim league or if they're just new to the SSL, it's really great to see, and we really hope that a lot of these players will stick around for the long haul and continue to get familiar with the SSL, because it's a very exciting league to start playing for. So best of luck to everyone who's been drafted so far and who is yet to be drafted, certainly.
Yeah, we have 4 more selections to be made here. We see in the round 4 we have a couple of passes in the draft board. That is when an organization doesn't want to make use of their draft picks, they can elect to pass their pick instead. And we've seen a couple of the organizations do that, and Catalunya is left remaining here on pick number 30, and then again at pick number 33. And in the beginning of the 4th round, we also have Catalonia again. I think this would essentially be Catalonia picking an entire roster in this draft, which is very exciting to see that they are able to get a couple of more players to their organization. And at 25 overall, Catalonia selects from Atletico Medellin, Diglett Primoris, the user Kayakarkov. I don't know what the 3 is. Kayakor? Yeah. I'll leave you to the commentators.
My best guess is Kayakarkov. I'm guessing the E is meant to be a 3.
Yeah.
That's my best guess. If you're watching, I apologize. I promise I gave it my best shot. So this player is all in on one thing, and that is leadership. This is a player that will galvanize the locker room and rally everyone around them to try and make sure to try and keep everyone on the same page. Decision 17 is a pretty strong pick. A little underrated again as attributes go, but when under pressure, this player will make the right decision, or at least will be most likely to make the right decision with that. 13 technique as well will help with balance, with keeping the ball, keeping possession. Will be expected primarily to stay back in defense and shore up that defensive line here for Catalonia. Can also play as a fullback on either side.
At 26 overall, we have AC Romana making their final selection in this draft. And they select from Atletico Medellin, La Bamba Ball, the user Moist Naval.
So this is another player that primarily wide midfielder, but can also play central midfield and central defensive midfield. Will like to bring that ball out of defense to try and kickstart an attack, which you really do like to see from a holding midfielder, or really a central midfielder. I still have yet to find any practical use for winds up opponents, but I still like the trade anyway because it's such a good flavor addition. And who knows, maybe it does have an effect. Unfortunately, I'm not skilled enough in FM to really know the ins and outs of that. But I do like the strong heading presence and the strong dribbling presence. Very important for a player that's going to be bringing the ball out of the defensive line and into midfield. So I think this is a solid foundation here.
And then we only have Catalonia picks left at 30 overall and at 33 overall. At 30 overall, Catalonia selects from Atletico Medellin, Monster Energy, the user The Sunken Ship.
So this is our first inactive player of the draft. This means that the player hasn't checked in on an activity check in a while. But as things stand, a solid start here. A central attacking midfielder primarily, but can also play on the left wing and cut inside to a central position. Will be shooting with power and can really dribble well. 17 dribbling and 15 acceleration means that they'll have those really quick bursts of speed that could really help make a difference in getting behind the defense. I also like anticipation. That's really important for knowing when to make those runs. And once they are in central positions, they can finish it off well with a 15 finishing attribute. So I think this is a pretty threatening attacking presence.
And the final pick of this season's prospect draft, we have Catalonia selecting from Atletico Medellin, William Charlito, the user Bradshaw23.
And if you're going to end the draft, this is a pretty solid way to do it. I think a strong presence in attack with 15 dribbling and 13 agility, so can really weave in and out of defenders. Playing 1-2s as well is an important attribute for just about any attacking player. Being able to have those tricky passes and make the runs necessary, and certainly a very strong pick here. A late addition to the academy, I believe, but a very strong start here. I think this player could really develop into something special if they continue to stay active, and could be in a very good position to make every other organization regret passing on them.
And that concludes this season's prospect draft. We have the overview of the draft board here, and anything you see in the final round, there weren't a lot of picks made there. Catalonia just securing even more of their roster for next season, essentially.
I think it's a testament to the philosophy of the Catalonia Soul organization as a whole that they're focusing on a lot of these players. They were not only did they have a lot of picks, they also were consistently finding really good value. You saw there at the end, William Charlito could be one of the steals of the draft, despite being the very last pick. Uh, so I think this has the makings of a very strong class here for Catalonia, and again it's a testament to shrewd management and shrewd scouting. So I think the sky's the limit for them in the next few seasons, as long as everything continues to hold together and they can continue to develop those players.
And I would like to take a moment to thank the graphics department for making these renders for all of the players, doing the kit changes to the academy team. It makes a bit of a nicer look to these prospect drafts. You can actually see who you're talking about more than just the numbers and the name. So thank you for that work. Definitely a big upgrade since we started doing that, or since the department started doing that a couple of seasons ago. And do you have any final thoughts? Because otherwise, I think we are done.
Well, I did want to say very quickly, congratulations, first of all, to everyone who was drafted in this draft. I believe all of the active players were taken, which is a great sign. Uh, Certainly, this is going to be a very interesting class to see grow. It's not as big as some of the classes we've had in the last few seasons, but that certainly doesn't mean that it won't be worthwhile to see these players develop. I am really excited to see some of these particular individuals. Uh, begin their SSL journey and potentially grow into the superstars of the league in a few seasons, depending on how things go. I think this is a class that has a lot of potential, and we may not see a lot of that for a couple of seasons yet, but certainly an encouraging sign for the health of the league as a whole. So, all in all, I think this is a pretty solid draft and a very strong class.
And with that, I think we're gonna end this broadcast. We have the World Simulation Football Classic coming up in the next 2 weeks, where some of these academy players are actually participating already in their rookie season or in their academy season. But we will see the start of the SSL season in 3 weeks, with the preseason starting at, let's see if I can pull up the correct date here. The preseason for season 19 is starting up on February 11th. And if you are interested in creating a player for the SSL, if you have not yet done so, the first day of the S20 draft class, so the next draft class, starts on February 3rd. So if you are interested in creating, you can take these couple of weeks and get to know the league a bit, join our Discord, and maybe start thinking about an idea for your player. And then on February 3rd, we will approve your player and get to work on putting you in the academy. And you get to follow in the S19 class footsteps and participate in the S20 Prospect Draft that we will hold at the end of next season.
It's going to be exciting for sure. I can't wait to see how that class shakes out. But certainly, as you said, in the meantime, we do have the World Simulation Football Classic over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a really fun time to see all of these players playing in different combinations than they're used to. Certainly, when international football is always a bit of a a bit of a wild card, but it should be fascinating viewing regardless. And I, for one, am excited to witness all of it and to commentate on a lot of it.
So I've been Canada's the commissioner, and Metafiction
And
has
I've
been...
been Metafiction.
Yes, exactly. And with that, we will bid you farewell and good luck in the World Simulation Football Classic and in the next season of the SSL.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Take care.